right. Welcome, John, today. We're so excited to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So obviously we go way back. We're best friends now, but tell us a little bit about what you do and, why you're here today.
Well, I am an EOS implementer. And what that means is that I help leadership teams and entrepreneurs achieve and get everything they want out of their business.
So, question for you. How did you get to be an EOS implementer? I almost said entrepreneur, and then I was thinking it is implementer. What drove you? Because I know you have other businesses. So what made you, how did your journey get you here?
Well, I'd say, I don't know how many years ago, but 20 plus years ago, I discovered EOS in a business that I was an owner in that we founded. And we hired an implementer, what I do now, to help us implement that into our business. So that's how I learned about it. We learned about it through an entrepreneurial peer group called EO. And so we just ran our business on it, and it was wonderful, and changed our business. We didn't have a struggling business. We just had a business without a system. And so we discovered it, plugged it in, loved it, and I've run all my businesses on EOS since then, a couple different ones.
So John, tell us a little bit. Well, let's start with, what does EOS stand for?
EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System.
So give us sort of the high-level components of EOS.
Good question. So what I do with customers or clients and what EOS provides teams, leadership teams and companies is three things. We call it vision, traction, and health. Vision from the standpoint, we just make sure, and we start with the leadership teams, and we just make sure that they completely understand the vision, where they're going and how they're going to get there. And then traction from the standpoint, we make sure that we're executing day in and day out towards that vision, bringing it down to the ground and executing with accountability and discipline. And from the traction or from the health side of it, we just make sure that we have a functioning, cohesive team. A lot of times leaders don't work great together. They're strong-headed. So we just make sure we have a functioning, cohesive team with that leadership team enjoying their jobs, enjoying each other, and getting work done. And then once we've achieved that with the leadership team, we migrate those same disciplines down into the rest of the organization, because as goes the leadership team, so goes the rest of the team, organization. And then you have a company that's fully, everybody knows where they're going, how they're going to get there, working with discipline, accountability, gaining traction in the company, and loving their life working for a great company.
How long would you say that takes?
Well,
be honest.
Well, there's all sorts of ways. Well, there's a couple of different ways you can implement EOS. There's a book called Traction, Get a Grip on Your Business by Gino Wickman. And Gino Wickman's the mastermind behind all this. And,
have you met him?
I have met him, yes. Yeah, he speaks at our conferences. So I practice what I preach. I have quarterly meetings and everything that you know about. But at the end of the day, Gino basically is the creator of EOS. And what we've done is you ask the question, how long does it take? And so when companies can buy that book, Traction, and self-implement, and I work with quite a few clients that did that, and that takes longer, of course, because you're perceiving it the way that you do and hopefully doing a good job with it. But you can also shorten that implementation by hiring an implementer like me. So I come in and work with you, and on average, I work with clients for about 2 years. That's about the time frame. So it takes about 2 years, but sometimes people can master it shorter time periods, and sometimes they like to go longer.
Can you dive in a little bit because, Kevin and I know how this rolls, but so we come to John and we're like, you're our guy, come help us. What next? What happens? What's kind of the process?
Oh, that's a great question. We have a proven process.
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, see, some of the secrets. But the special sauce includes a proven process. So I have a very easy, simple, illustrated plan that I can show folks on our website or in live. But ultimately what it is we start with what we call a 90-minute meeting, where I sit down with the leadership team and I do a very high-level presentation on what EOS is and how it can help your business. It's kind of the movie version of the book Traction. And then if they decide to work with me or decide to implement EOS, we do 3 days of implementation where we do full day sessions training, and they're spaced out 30 days apart. And that's a spaced learning system. It's on purpose to do that. So we do 3 days over a 60-day period. And then after that, the proven process of the meeting pulse that we provide what you should follow is a quarterly meetings where we get together every 90 days. We look at where we've been, where we are, where we're going. And then we also do a 2-day annual planning session. So that happens over time. So that's the proven process. And that's what we do. That's how we start with that 90-minute meeting to introduce it. And then the journey is the way that we can make sure that they're completely satisfied clients.
Okay. Okay, now I have another question.
Yes.
So take the EOS and all the wonderful things about it. Let's talk about like the little gossipy, dirty talk about it. Have you ever had anyone in the first 90 minutes, like it is battling, like tears, anything juicy that's like happened that you're like, oh, because the people like me who watch Bravo are going to be a little curious on that.
Yeah, so not in that 90-minute meeting, that's just an introduction, but as far as when we start the process, is that I think what you're talking about in that first day, can there be some sparks? But our goal is to make sure that everybody in the room is open and honest because we're there for the greater good of the business. And if we can do that, sometimes, opinions will conflict. But at the end of the day, the team, if there's some vulnerable based trust there and this team works well together, there's nothing to worry about. There's nothing that we can't solve. And the answers are always there in the room.
I think the beauty of what you bring to the table, John, is a lot of people listening to this podcast are going to have business coaches. They may have sales coaches. They're going to be used to or see the value in having someone help them in their business, right? Mm-hmm. EOS in the system itself is one thing, but the value that an implementer brings is you're steering the process and bringing out things that may not otherwise be discussed with management or leadership teams, right? Mm-hmm. It's hard to feel vulnerable and be completely direct and honest. I know you talk about Minnesota nice. That's a blessing and a curse for us, right?
Yes.
Part of why EOS might be really successful up here because your job is to help get people uncomfortable with being honest.
Entering the danger, yeah, absolutely. So my job as an implementer is three things. I'm a teacher, so I'm teaching you the EOS process as purely as possible. And that's what's great about us implementers is that we're doing it the exact way it was intended. That's what we're teaching. Then we're facilitators, and I think that's where you're going, is that I do help facilitate conversations. Of course, I like the people in the room, but I don't have any emotions or egos attached to this business. So I can certainly, if I see someone raise an eyebrow when a comment's been made, I'm going to ask them why the look. I'm going to try to extract that. So yeah, you're right. I think EOS is extremely popular in Minnesota because we're passive aggressive, and we try to. And EOS allows you to have opportunities to avoid being passive. So, and then the third thing that I do is I am a coach. So just like great athletes, there's other people out there to help coach them up, and that's the third part of my job.
John, when you meet with potential customers or current customers, especially at the beginning, what are some of the is there a common thread or issue that you see in most businesses that EOS helps solve right away?
Yeah, as we implement it and we get stronger in some of the components of the system, the impurities become quite painfully obvious. I'm not going to lie. Or the opportunities we're missing are become obvious. So we have to get really strong with those issues and solving them real time. And so some of the issues that come up is people issues. I hate to say it, but through the process, we've identified what right people are and what the right seats means to companies. And through the people analyzers and some of the other tools we have, that does become painfully obvious to where we have to have some corrective action sometimes, or sometimes people move around to different functions in the business. So that's kind of common. But I don't want people to get nervous that they're going to go fire half their team because of EOS. But I did have a client yesterday with 120 or 70 employees rather. And through the process, there's been 10% of the employees have been either left the business because they didn't want to follow the process, or they just weren't right people, right seat. And the rest of the business is now excelling and loves it because of that discovery. So that's usually one of the big ones is the people. But not a common issue, but some of the most loved things about it is when people discover our meeting pulse in that level 10 meeting, which you guys know very much about. And those simple tools that we introduce is where people find a lot of the value, or at least that's where I see some of the wins coming as well, not just issues.
So let's expand on that a little bit, the meeting pulse, right? None of us like going to meetings, right? And some people listening, they might have 5 or 6 different meetings that they have to attend each week. So I know from our own experience when we rolled this out to our whole company, it's, there's another meeting for me to attend, right? But EOS really simplifies that and organizes what a meeting should look like.
Yeah, we have an agenda that's the same way for every one of those meetings. That it always starts on time, ends on time, same day of the week. And that agenda is really simple. And what it's done is it's caused people to not go on tangents and make sure that they have productive meetings. We call that level 10 meeting because at the end of the meeting, we rate those meetings, and we're trying to make sure that that's a great use of your time, a 10 or better, or 8 or better. And then ultimately that level 10 meeting was designed to actually replace meetings and get things done in that one meeting so that you can have less meetings. So if you're one of those people that just rolled your eyes hearing about another meeting, rest assured it's there to help.
Well, and one of the things in our own experience is it's not only brings high level of communication. You might have thought before you were having high level of communication, but for us, like now all departments are speaking, but also you are part of the solution and everyone has a voice. So for example, for us here at All American Title, every single person is can bring their issues, but is also part of the solution and are able to talk it through, this is what we're going to do. And it's not, we're all in this together, and you're not powerless at your job. You are able to communicate to your manager or whatnot of, here's the issue that's taking place. And I think it's created a really, not only well of work-life balance, which I don't really think is a real thing, but that, but as well as our culture has changed and we are better for it.
Yeah. So one of the big things we focus on first, as you know, is our culture and what the core values of this business are. And so once we've discovered that, we can then plug that in and make sure that we have the right people and the people that exhibit those core values, and that's what we want from the culture of this business. So once we've dialed that in, and of course, when you get the teams together in these meetings, and as long as there's decent trust in that room, as you said here, every voice is heard, the answers are in that room, and we get together to solve issues, and that's the number one reason for that level 10 meeting, is solve those issues, knock down those obstacles that are keeping us from getting where we want to go.
So John, core values is sort of a buzzword in business, right? We read and hear about that. We hear people talk about that all the time. One of the, I think, secrets to EOS is it sort of systematizes what the important core values of the business are, but then judges or appraises the people within the business based on those core values. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, once we've identified what the core values are, and yeah, you're right, that's been a buzzword. You hear that, you see it on people's websites and what they're using it. And really, core values are not intended for external purposes. It is a little bit, but we're not using it for marketing to try to get business and get customers. This is really what we want from this team. So people that will work here, the permission to play at this company is that you must exhibit these core values most of the time. So once we've identified that, and that way we drive that home, and it helps us, with incenting people or making sure they're happy in the business, is we do shout outs quite often, and we want customers or our clients to do that with their employees. And when you see somebody exhibit that core value, shout that out, make sure they understand that that's how we drive that home. And eventually what happens is that people, they're not just words on the wall. People are living them. And then leadership teams and people that have direct reports, when they're using these core values, they use them in their hiring, their recruiting process. And it helps you not only identify great people, but almost more importantly, it helps you repel the ones that don't exhibit those core values. Because if they don't have core values, they're not the right people for this business if they don't exhibit our core values.
I think we've all worked with people before, had people in our businesses that are revenue producers or profitable people, but are a real challenge to work with, or maybe they're not a good teammate, or maybe they're not trustworthy, right? And at times, eventually that plays itself out. And when that person perhaps is no longer with the organization, you realize, man, that actually was addition by subtraction. They might have been a revenue producer, but all the other things that they were doing, the negativity they were bringing to the company, was not productive.
Yeah, if people don't exhibit the core values, even right now, they're chipping away at your culture.
For sure, and so I think one of the real eye openers for us in starting EOS is you literally rate your employees, and by the way, the employees rate management and ownership.
Yes,
as
it's
well.
a lot of fun.
We established what we thought were our most important core values. We have 7 of them, and you mentioned the people analyzer.
Yes.
You're literally going through and plus or minus, giving people a plus or minus with those core values. And it was an eye-opening thing for us. And I think as leaders, we have areas we need to be working on too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so to get that feedback from the employees in a healthy way, in a constructive way, was invaluable.
Yeah.
And so part of the beauty of EOS is it opens the door to have some of those conversations.
100%. It makes the tools that EOS offers, like that people analyzer we talked about, It's not a complex tool, but it's a tool to stimulate conversation. And of course, we all have to be open and honest. There's nothing we can't hide behind anything. We have to be open and honest, but it's just a simple tool to make sure that people exhibit the core values that you feel that they're exhibiting at most of the time. That's what we need. And then, of course, the other part of our people analyzer isn't just, if you exhibit core values, you are the right people. And then the second discipline is right seats. And then you have to GWC, if you remember that from the people analyzer. The G, get it. You must want the job, and then you must have the capacity to do it. So got to have yeses. So right people, right seat. Right people exhibit your core values. Right seats, they actually can do the job. They have the ability, the experience, the expertise.
Well, and most people want to know, like, if I'm not doing something well in my leadership, I want to know that so I can try to fix that or be a better leader, right? So most people, I believe, want to know is if they're not doing a good aspect in a certain part of their job, they want to know so they can then develop themselves and learn. Like I said, most. There are some people who don't, and and so once we started that, it was not only an eye opener for like yourself. It's like, okay, well, that's how I need to work on that as a leader, it's being open and honest, which can be very vulnerable and scary. But once you do it and it gets more comfortable, it is a game changer.
It surely is. It is. I'm glad to hear that you've found enjoyment and success from it as well.
So, John, we've talked about a couple of the pillars, or core values, the meeting pulse, and sort of what that looks like. Another huge component of EOS is data, is having a measurable.
Kevin's favorite part.
We could have our own podcast on this. But is data, and probably my favorite saying out of EOS is what gets measured gets done.
Yes, yeah.
So
I'd be a millionaire if I had $1 every time he said it.
Tell us a little bit about, from the system standpoint, the data component, scorecard, measurable, what gets measured gets done.
Yep, exactly. So that's one of the 5 foundational tools is the scorecard discipline. Again, not rocket science here at all, but ultimately what we're trying to do is the tool, that scorecard, is 5 to 15 components or 5 to 15 measurables that you can watch on a regular basis to give you a complete pulse on the business. We always joke about if you were to pick up and leave and go take a sabbatical for the next 2 years and you go down to Jamaica or whatnot, that this scorecard would provide you the perfect data so that you know exactly or have a great pulse on what's going on in the business. So that's the tool we use. So then when the measurable is the second discipline. So that's one of the 6 components of that we want you to get strong in, is that data component. And so the tool we use is the scorecard, and then the measurables. And what a measurable is just something that we're going to hold somebody accountable for keeping on track. We're going to set a goal for it, and then we're going to hold them accountable to make sure. And people could have more than one measurable, but we use measurables because kind of where you went with that before, but you also must inspect what you expect. So you want to use that to make sure you're getting the desired results as well. So we make sure that the scorecard discipline is there to help you make decisions based off of data, not egos and emotions that often drive entrepreneurial decision making. And so we definitely use that to help clear the way to make the best decisions. So 2 simple, easy disciplines. That's the neat thing about EOS is EOS is designed to simplify your business. Somewhere along the line, we made business really complex. So Gino Wickman and a slew of other folks and his inspirations have really helped us dumb it down, I guess, if you will. And EOS is there to make business a lot easier. Business isn't easy, but EOS is designed to make it easier.
I think that's a huge takeaway for our listeners as you're thinking about your own business. Does everyone in your organization have a measurable that they're accountable to each week, each month, each quarter?
Yeah.
And in our own experience, we didn't create those measurables from the top down. That was a collaborative experience. So we gained buy-in from our people. I need to make so many calls this week if I'm in sales, or I need to have X amount of closings if I'm a closer, right? And so then it creates, again, the pathway for those conversations as we're either hitting those measurables or not.
Yeah.
It's very out there, which is uncomfortable, again, because people aren't used to that accountability tool. But if you have the right person in your business, they want to win. They want to achieve it. Every single person, what gets measured gets done. They want to hit that goal each week.
It's a motivating tool for sure. You want to be, if you're competitive, you're going to try to be better than your peers. And that's always there's some healthy competitiveness there too. But you also just don't want to, so that you're not performing in front of your peers. So it's just another tool to help just drive motivation. But if you are most of the right people, right seats, you have the drive, and if they do, they help. If they're the right people in the right seats, they should have the drive and want to make sure they're hitting those measurables as well and doing better.
Or sometimes I think in our industry, title, mortgage, real estate, we're in a service-based business. Mm-hmm. So I know in the past I've had employees come to me prior to EOS asking the question, am I doing a good job?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, I think so. I really like you, your personality, you're a core value fit. But from a measuring of the performance, it's obviously more than that. Mm-hmm. And what EOS does is gives everybody in the organization some measurables that they need to be accountable to.
Yeah, and we visit them every week in that level 10 meeting when we just look at the scorecard tool, because we'll evaluate that. So that's the other reason. You can't just have these tools don't work if you don't use them, and EOS has provided just a great layout to have that weekly meeting so that you're actually using these tools as they're intended, which is what we call mastery.
And for example, I mean, Kevin, I think you can say this, is that like the meetings, when we talked about this earlier about, it's just another meeting, I think our leadership L10 saved, at least for me, probably 4 or 5 hours out of the week in just doing one meeting, 1 hour and a half. I can only imagine for you, Kevin, how many hours. So it's simplifying. So you're not having 5 conversations and he said, she said, right hand, go, no, now go talk to the left hand. It's all right there. Everyone on the same page, hour and a half, and then go. And it's a pathway of what you need to do in your day and in your job. And if you don't know already, but you know what I mean? Like, it's a roadmap on what you need to continue to accomplish every single week.
It's hard for people when they first learn that tool to really stay disciplined on it. I'm sure you found the same, because, the big part of that level 10 meeting and why they're so effective is that we do visit these tools. We first, of course, we come into the meeting and we do a segue just to see how everybody's doing, a nice transition into the meeting. And then we'll pull that scorecard out. We look at that scorecard and really quick and identify, is there any issues? But the magic about that meeting is we're not going to talk about any issues that we've discovered there. We're going to drop it down. You know those words, drop it down to an issues list. So then we look at the priorities, the rocks and things like that people are working on. And as we look through these other sections, the ultimate goal here is that whenever we look at, if you discover an issue, that is not the time to talk about it. We're going to put that in a spot, as you know, and use 60 good minutes at the end of that session, or for the bulk of that meeting rather, and solve issues and make sure we're making decisions to push this business forward.
So you mentioned rocks, a good segue. So rocks is synonymous sort of with goals, right?
Yep.
So probably the last component I think we want to discuss with EOS is the business planning part of it.
Yeah.
Do our listeners have a business plan? Do you have a quarterly goal? Do you have a yearly goal? If so, is everybody rowing the boat in the same direction, is what we say here. Yes. Tell us about, from an EOS standpoint, how rocks work, how the business planning part works.
The rocks are those priorities in the business that we're going to focus on. We live in a 90-day world in EOS. So when we have those rocks, when we establish the priorities, now we know what we're going to focus on for that time period. But just to take one step back, so rocks are a foundational tool that you need to use in EOS. So 5 of those, I said there's 5 foundational tools. That's one of them. Rolling that back one more, another foundational tool is that VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer. And that's that 2-page, when you said business plan, this is just a 2-page plan. And so it's not a 55, 700-page business plan I'm going to present to a bank or anything like that. This is just a 2-page business plan to help us determine what the vision is from this business and how we're going to achieve it. And it's 8 simple questions, right? On the vision side of that document is, what are your core values, right? We talk about that. What's your core focus? What's your sweet spot? What do you do best? And are you staying in your lane and focusing on that? What's your long-term target? 5 years, 10 years, 30 years? Where are you trying to take this business? And then how are you going to do that with a simple little section on there? And it's our marketing strategy, identifying who our target market is, what our 3 uniques are.
Their proven process.
The proven process is listed there. Listen, you're such a good student. And then we also once we identify who we are, where we're going, who we are, what we do, where we're going, and how we're going to achieve it with that marketing strategy, then we paint that 3-year picture, right? So now we can see in 3 years, really try to visualize exactly in 3 short years from now, what are we going to do? What are we going to be? So we try to make some revenue predictions, or we do rather, And then we'd like to do like a 5 or 15 bullets on what it looks like. How many employees? Are you in the same building? How many delivery vehicles do you have? My favorite is, do you have a game room in your building, or something like that? Something to really drill down and help crystallize what this business looks like in 3 short years, and make it that you want to work there and that your employees want to work there. So that helps us with the vision. We flip the document over. The second page is the traction, right? And that's where we talk about now 1-year goals. What do we have to do this year to achieve that 3-year, to achieve that 10-year, right? And it's just a little section, as you know. We set 6 goals, up to 6 goals, 5 to 7 maybe, but less is more. When everything's important, nothing's important. So we just set a couple goals, and then we just focus on that. And then we bring it down even more. We distill it down into a 90-day window, and that's where those rocks come into play. And we just set make the same revenue predictions, and then we identify what the 3 to 7 priorities for the business are. In each department, maybe a couple rocks get established as well for individuals. But ultimately, then we know exactly what we're going to work on to achieve the 1-year, the 3-year, the 10-year. And then, of course, we identify all of our issues on that same document. So those are the 8 questions. But you said business plan, that's all you really need. And then when you share that VTO or Vision Traction document, Vision Traction Organizer with your team, and you will do that every 90 days. Now they know where you're going. They know how you're going to get there. So it's magical. It's a great tool.
John, can you do that? Because as our listeners, they might be like real estate, a real estate team of like 10 people, but not everyone's going to be on that day with you, right? Like our leadership team, there's 4 of us,
oh, right.
5 of us. And so we're all there. So are you able to do this if you have 2 or 3 leadership members of the team, right? Like, because I'm thinking about as our agents are like, there's a team lead and then maybe director of operations or what that looks like. It is able to achieve this still, even with like 2 or 3 people in the room to
100%. Yeah. Less is more, again, I always like to say, but it's those leaders that are managing the main components of the main functions of that business. That's who we want to have in the room to make sure that they're going to help focus. And then just equally, they will take, again, like I said, they take the same disciplines out to their departments, and they roll they do the exact same thing with their departments. So we just have a leadership team, typically anywhere from 2 to 5, maybe 7. I've had bigger, but sometimes we find over time they just kind of weed themselves out to where we get down to a core leadership team. And they're the ones who are having their level 10, then the departments have their level 10s, and communications is spread throughout the business.
You make it sound so simple, and really, in many ways, EOS is simple. Mm-hmm. It's not easy. It's not easy to execute, right? Most of us have really strong parts of our business. If you look at the 5 foundations of EOS, we were maybe strong in 2 or 3 of them, and we had some holes in 1 or 2 of them.
Yeah.
And so what EOS strives to do is take all 5, put them together.
6, actually.
6, sorry.
Not a good student.
No, he is a good student. I know what he's thinking, though. I know what you're...
And ties them together, yeah. and then holds us as leadership accountable to make sure we are connecting in each area.
Yeah, just as a reminder, so the 6 components make up this EOS model, and the EOS model has the first component that we make sure that we're strong in is that vision component, like I said, making sure everybody knows where they're going, how they're going to get there. Then we work on the people component, making sure we have the right people in the right seats. And so once we have identified what our core values are, that's what we've done as a leadership team, is we have established what greatness means to this organization. Because when we were first walked in there, your greatness and your greatness might have been 2 different definitions. So the people component's the second component, and the data, which you love, I know the most. So we have the data component. That we have to get strong in. So that's the top 3 components, and we really start working on those initially. And then what happens is you find all these impurities that you have in your business, and then they become issues. And so we have to get great at that. So that's the 4th component, solving issues, right? And then the 5th component is our process component, making sure that you're running this business off of proven processes, or core processes rather. Every business has 6 to 10, but ultimately what we need to do is make sure they've been documented at a very, very high level, and that people are actually following them, so that we're creating sustainability and consistency in the business, and which leads to profitability. And then the traction is the 6th component in that model. So that's the 6th, and what that means is just bringing that vision down to the ground, executing on it day in and day out with accountability and discipline. And if you look at the model, you'll see it looks like a big piece of pie, and then each one is its own piece, and then vision's on the top and traction's on the bottom, and there's no coincidence that that's happened, because the vision without that traction is really hallucination. And that's a Gino Wickman quote, and I just love it. You got to do it.
Where can people find you if they're curious on implementing EOS in their business?
Well, EOS Worldwide is the website, so eosworldwide.com. Just if you want to go learn anything about it, they have tools that you can download, and I suggest you do that. Vision Traction Organizer, even if EOS isn't for you, that tool is wonderful, and you should download that and just plug it in, take an afternoon and fill that out. But otherwise, you'll find my name. I'm John Klick, JohnKlick. And a simpler way to find me is just johnklick.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a million, John. We appreciate you.
I appreciate you guys so much. Thanks so much.